Hey everyone, so I'm getting ready to install my coilovers. First thing I kind of wanted to do just to see where things are at is measure the distance from the center of the tire to the center of the fender well, and then the bottom of the tire to the center of the fender well. I'm going to show you what I mean. So I'm putting this right down the center, and if we look right there, I'm going to call it a 27 and a quarter right at that point. And then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to move this to about where I think center is on the wheel, and then measure it right there. So if you look, that's right about 16 inches. So that's going to be my reference point. Obviously I got to take the wheel off, jack up the car, and then there's going to be these bolts right here, 1, 2, 3, that are going to have to come off when I do this. So I'm going to go ahead and jack up the car now, and then we'll take it. Alright, so since the coilovers come pre-assembled, the main thing that I need to do is be able to drop the suspension. The easiest way that I could see to drop the suspension on this is you got this bolt right here that goes all the way through, and then you got that one right there. When I remove that A-arm, it should allow this whole assembly to drop, but the sway bar mount right there is also going to keep it from dropping. So the idea would be disconnect the sway bar mount, disconnect these two pieces right here, and that should give me enough room to drop the suspension. Something I'm gonna have to keep an eye on is this sensor right here, or cord line, and then this line right here, make sure it doesn't drop so much that it's pulling on that too much. So I'm gonna figure out what sizes those are, and then I'm gonna go ahead and figure out what size the sway bar is. Typically on a sway bar, you're gonna have to put an Allen key into here and then undo the bolt. So I'm going to also need to find an Allen key that fits there. So I'm going to go ahead and do that and figure out what size that is. Alright, so I already took this one bolt off. I used an 11/16 wrench, but actually looking at it, I should be using a 17mm wrench, but this was right in there. And then what I'm going to go ahead and do is take this off. All I'm doing is taking my 11/16 and I'm turning it lefty loosey, righty tighty, right? So left is going to be down on this one, and if I don't have enough leverage to turn it, this is a trick that I've learned. You take your wrench, right, and you're going to get your wrench wedged in there, right? I always forget how to get this in there. The idea is to get this in there so that you have more leverage. There it goes. So basically I got this on there, and I have the mouth of this one on there, and then it kind of just extends out my bar. So if you don't have a breaker bar or a big wrench, then you do that and just make sure you turn it. So if you look, that's starting to spin now, and once it's loose, I don't need the whole setup. See, I can start turning it. So 17mm socket would do good here, or 17mm ratcheting wrench would do good here. Like I said, I'm using 11/16. It works, and that's all I'm doing. Going ahead and taking this off, and then I'm going to go ahead and finish that up real quick. Alright, so here's an issue I ran into. You have the brake line right here, and the brake line is hitting the bolt. So I can't take that bolt off, so I'm going to have to disconnect this bracket right here in order to get the brake line off, and then pull that out of the way. I might be able to move the whole assembly a little bit here and there, and that might make it to where that comes off easier. But my suggestion is to just go ahead and remove this bracket right here so that you can remove this brake line, swing it out of place, and then put that bolt in. Alright, so I wanted to help you guys catch up with where I'm at. I took this off, and I took these off. Like I said, I used 11/16, but it's actually a 17mm, so use that. And then this screw right here is a 12 millimeter. I undid that so that I could take the rest of this bolt off. The next thing that I had to do was remove the nut and bolt from the bottom of the coilover. And then I removed the sway bar. You can see it disconnected right here. I moved it from that bolt down there. If you're having issues removing the sway bar because it's under too much tension, my suggestion is get your jack, put it underneath the control arm, right, and then just jack it up. And then when you jack it up, it will help release some of the tension that's on the sway bar. Pretty much get underneath it, and by pushing up on it like that, release some of the tension, and that'll let you take the sway bar off. So now the only thing that's really holding this on is I haven't taken the bolt off of this side yet, so I got to pull that off. And then up here you got to take off these bolts, and those are also 14 millimeters, so I took those 1, 2, 3 off, and then once again took this off, use the 12 millimeter, loosen that to get that bolt off, 17 millimeter down here to get this bolt off, and then a 14 to get the sway bar off. Now the only other thing I need to do is make sure this right here, you can see how it's kind of tight. I want to make sure that I give myself some room there, and then I need to remove this. Then it should loosen up this whole entire assembly. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. Alright, so I removed that bolt and it dropped the tension, but now this line right here is super tight. So you got to either one, figure out how to loosen that up to give yourself a little bit more room, or two, just really pay attention to how tight you're pulling on that. You're going to need to get your coilover off, but it's pretty loose. So I just lift this up, and all I'm just doing is lifting it. So now I can drop it down. So you can see it's off, and lift it up there. So now it's just a matter of kind of just finagling it out of the way. So there's a stock one. That's what it looks like. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and get the 10 coilover and get that in. Alright, so I'm going to compare them side by side. If you look, here it is matched up to each other. You can see there's already just alone, there's probably about an inch difference where the bolts line up. And like I said before, these come with the preload already set and the height where they recommend. So I'm just going to leave it exactly how it is. And then what I need to do is take this, there's my 3 bolts up there. I got to line it up to where those 3 bolts match up along with the bottom. So the easiest way is to drop this through the same way I got the other one in. Be careful not to scratch your paint up here as you're trying to finagle it in, but it's kind of just a matter of like figuring it all out. Now that looks like it's lined up there, but if you look, these bolt holes look like they don't line up, but you could easily spin this just a little bit. So get it spun where it needs to be, and then line it up, and then you're going to slide this up in there. I find it easier to go ahead and start the bolts up there and then line this up down here. So I'm going to take these 3 bolts, come up here, and I'm kind of just finger tightening, getting them lined up. And this is going to keep it from falling. Hold on, I just noticed something. There is a black plate. It is typically there. It just slipped it down. So I'm going to line that black plate back up. This black plate is what's used to line up your stock strut bar brace. I don't currently have one, but or I don't have one installed at the very least, but I do plan on having one. If you see these ones I can't screw in, there's not enough room there in the thread, so that means I just need to push this up a little bit more. So I'm going to try to do that, push it up, and then try to tighten it down again. There, it's catching on that one, not so much catching on that one. So I'm going to go ahead and put the camera down and get those tightened. Alright, so I got that started in there, and then what I did is I took my jack and I put it underneath. It's kind of holding everything up in place. What I'm trying to do is get this lined up, and then when I get it lined up, I'm going to use one of the bolts to kind of just get it in place. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. I'm not sure if I can set up the camera or you can see what I'm doing, but I'm going to try real quick. Alright, so you can see I kind of had that bolt just in there. I'm not sure if you saw me doing it. And then here, I'm going to loosen this back up, kind of just pull it out of the way. And then I'll be able to slide this in. I need to line up the hole a little better though. And then I'll be able to slide this in just to get it lined up. There we go. So now that's going to kind of keep that in place. So the last part's going to be getting that to line up. So I'm just going to use my jack again. Try to get it to line up. So there it is, right? Use the jack. See, I kind of have the bolt lined up, so now I'm going to take the bolt. Sorry for all the movement. Take the bolt and then get it to line up in there. Push it all the way through. And then there it is, popped out on the other side. Before I lose the tension that I have, see, I'm trying to get the sway bar lined up, but it's a little too high. So I'm going to drop the suspension just a little. There we go. Now I got that in. Push that through. So now really all that's left is tightening everything up. So I'm going to go ahead and get everything all tightened up, and then this side will be done. Alright, so I got everything tightened up. Got that tightened up there. This was a 17 right there, also a 17. That bolt right there was a 12. Then down here, 17, and then the sway bar is 14. Like I said, if you're having issues lining things up, go ahead and use your jack and try to lift up and lower the suspension as needed. And then I got these bolts in here tightened up, which were 14s right there. So this one side is done. Honestly, this took me probably about 30 minutes, but it would have been shorter if I wasn't filming and stopping and trying to show you guys everything. Even though this is probably only about, I don't know, 5 to 10 minutes of filming, it kind of just slows everything down. But 17s, 14s, 12s is all you really need to get everything done. I'm going to go ahead and put the wheel back on and then lower the car. Can't really get a true ride height because not the rest of the suspension isn't lowered yet, but I'm sure there'll be some sort of difference. So let me go ahead and do that. Alright, so I have the stock wheel back on there, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to our measurements that we had at the beginning. So right there we're at 26 1/4. Can't remember exactly, but I thought it was 27 1/4 when we measured before. So about an inch drop there. And then the other way to measure is come to about the center and then measure there. And it looks like I'm at about 15, and I'm pretty sure I was at 16 before. So like I said, I haven't done the rest of the car, and then these will have to settle a little bit. So before I decide to make it lower or do anything, I want to get all 4 of them on and then let it settle. I've showed you how to do the fronts. The next part is going to be showing you guys how to do the rears.